Welcome to today's deep dive. It looks like you've been wrestling with the idea of apologies.
Yeah, and not just any apologies.
Right, you've been exploring what it means to make a sacred apology.
You've been listening to this podcast called Sacred Apologies.
And it's hosted by an Israelite theologian.
Yeah, so we're talking about blending those biblical teachings
With current events and even...
social media.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating mix.
It is, and it seems you're really trying to move beyond just a simple, I'm sorry.
Definitely. We're going for deeper meaning when it comes to apologies.
Like how they play out in ancient wisdom.
And in modern society.
So where should we begin?
Well, the source material emphasizes that for Israelites, apologies are more than just etiquette.
It's a divine command.
Oh, wow. What makes it a divine command?
It comes down to the core principle of loving your neighbor as yourself.
Okay.
That's in Leviticus 19.8.
Okay.
And when you think about it in that context, apologizing becomes an act of obedience to Yahweh.
So you're aligning your actions with divine law.
Right. But in today's world, we often see apologies as weakness.
That's a great point.
How does that fit in?
Well, the source contrasts that modern view by looking at King David.
Yeah.
Even with all his power and status, he still acknowledged his transgressions.
Right.
With heartfelt repentance in Psalm 51.
Oh, that's right.
He knew that true strength came from humility.
And seeking forgiveness from Yahweh.
Exactly. So that psalm is filled with raw emotion.
Definitely.
And a real desire for reconciliation with Yahweh.
It challenges our thinking about admitting fault.
Right. It's not weakness.
Not at all.
So the source really highlights that genuine remorse,
Okay.
confession, and a commitment to change.
Uh-huh.
Those are pathways to spiritual growth.
I like that.
And they help restore your relationship with Yahweh.
It really reframes how we think about apologizing.
It's not about losing face. It's about aligning yourself with those divine principles.
Okay, so apologies are deeply rooted in Israelite tradition.
Yeah.
But how do we make them meaningful, especially today?
Well, the source brings up this idea of the 5 love languages.
Okay,
Have you heard about those?
I have. Like how people feel loved in different ways.
Exactly, like through words of affirmation.
Or acts of service, receiving gifts,
Right, or quality time.
or physical touch.
Yes. And the source applies that to apologies.
I've never thought of it like that.
It's fascinating.
How did that even work?
Okay, say you hurt someone whose love language is words of affirmation.
Okay,
A generic sorry won't cut it for them.
right.
You need to validate their feelings.
And reassure them that you care.
It's like verbal balm for their wounds.
Speak their emotional language.
Right.
What about if their love language is acts of service?
Then actions speak louder than words.
Show, don't tell.
Right. So alongside your apology, you need to take tangible steps to right your wrong.
Okay.
Maybe you help them with a task,
Uh-huh.
or fix something you broke, or just be more attentive.
So you're showing that you're truly sorry and that you want to make things right.
Exactly. And this connects to that diversity of expressions we see in Song of Songs.
Oh, interesting.
Love can be expressed in many ways, and so can apologies.
I like that. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. It emphasizes understanding the other person's perspective.
And tailoring your apology to their needs.
You got it. It's not just a formula.
It's genuine empathy in action.
Exactly. And get this, modern science supports this ancient wisdom.
Really? There's scientific evidence for this.
Yes?
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
The source cites research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships.
Okay.
Studies have shown that genuine apologies,
Uh-huh.
the kind that acknowledge the hurt and take responsibility,
Okay.
they actually increase forgiveness and rebuild trust.
So it's not just a feel-good concept.
Nope.
There's actual data to support it.
Exactly. One study found that couples who used love language apologies
Whoa.
saw a 30% improvement in their relationship satisfaction.
Wow. That's huge.
That's a significant jump.
So saying sorry in the right way can actually strengthen relationships.
That's what the research suggests.
It sounds like there's something to these sacred apologies.
I think so.
It's like science is catching up to what the Israelites knew thousands of years ago.
Right.
So we've got this fascinating mix of ancient wisdom and modern insights.
We do.
But how does this all play out in real life?
As a matter of fact, the podcast host shares a personal story
Oh, okay.
about a misunderstanding they had with a friend.
It happens to the best of us.
It really highlights the power of tailoring your apology to the individual.
Okay, let's hear it.
It all started with a misinterpreted text message
Uh-huh.
between the host and their friend.
Oh, yeah, miscommunication in the digital age.
Right.
It's like a universal experience these days.
It is.
But instead of things escalating online,
Yeah.
the host chose a different approach.
Right. And it's interesting how they thought about their friend's love language before responding.
Oh, I see. So they realized their friend valued sincerity.
Yeah. And quality time.
So instead of a quick text,
which might have felt dismissive,
right,
they invited their friend to a coffee shop.
that's thoughtful. I
Yeah,
love how they called it a modern-day table of fellowship,
that's a great way to put it.
right? It brings to mind those ancient gatherings where
Yeah,
people came together to share meals and resolve conflict.
strengthen their bonds.
Exactly. It's like creating a safe space
Mm-hmm.
for open and honest conversation.
Away from all those digital distractions.
It reminds me of how important face-to-face interaction is.
Especially with sensitive issues.
For sure.
And the host really made an effort to speak their friend's love language during that meeting.
Okay.
They acknowledged the hurt they caused
Uh-huh.
and expressed a genuine willingness to learn from their mistake.
It was about true reconciliation.
Exactly.
This really resonates with me,
Yeah,
Sometimes a simple "I'm sorry" just isn't enough.
it's
We
not.
have to go deeper, understand the other person.
And tailor our apologies accordingly.
It's about empathy, action,
Yeah,
and a genuine desire to restore the relationship.
you got it.
It aligns with that teaching from Leviticus 19.18,
Yeah.
to love our neighbor as ourselves.
It's about extending grace and compassion, even when it's tough.
So we're seeing how this idea of sacred apologies works in personal relationships.
Right.
But what about public apologies?
Good question.
Especially now, when every public figure's misstep can go viral.
It's true, the source material actually talks about this.
Okay.
They compare insincere public apologies to empty sacrifices.
Empty sacrifices. What do they mean by that?
It's like Yahweh desires genuine repentance,
Okay.
a changed heart, not just outward displays of remorse.
Right.
Micah 6:8 calls us to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God.
Oh, yeah.
So our apologies have to reflect true sincerity
Uh-huh.
and a commitment to actually aligning our actions with those divine principles.
So it's not enough to just issue a carefully crafted statement or tweet.
Right.
You have to back up your words with actions.
Exactly. And that's where those 6 steps to a healing apology come in.
Yeah, even for public apologies.
They're a framework for approaching these situations with sincerity,
And intentionality.
just like we do in our personal relationships,
It's a blueprint for navigating public apologies.
while staying true to those principles of sacred apologies.
Can we go over those 6 steps again?
Sure.
I'd like to see how they apply to apologies made on a larger scale.
Okay, so the first step is reflect in prayer.
Okay.
That's crucial for any apology.
Right.
Before saying anything,
Mm-hmm.
you take time for introspection, examine your heart,
Uh-huh.
and seek guidance from Yahweh.
So it starts with self-awareness.
Yeah, and acknowledging the need for personal growth.
No matter how big or small the apology.
Right.
Okay, what's the second step?
Acknowledge the hurt.
Okay.
You address the harm you caused directly.
Okay.
Show you understand the impact of your actions.
So in a public apology,
Yeah.
you use language that resonates with those affected.
And you avoid minimizing or deflecting responsibility.
It's about taking ownership
Right.
and validating feelings.
Empathy is key here.
Definitely.
And that leads us to the third step.
Okay,
Express empathy.
got it.
This builds trust and conveys sincerity.
Okay.
Acknowledge the pain and suffering you've caused.
Mm-hmm.
And express genuine remorse.
Like Proverbs 15.1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath.
Exactly. You create a space for understanding.
And constructive dialogue.
Even when there's anger and hurt.
Okay, but what about actions?
That's step 4. Commit to change.
Got it.
You outline the steps you'll take to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
Maybe policy changes, personal growth plans,
Mm.
or seeking professional help.
The key is to demonstrate a commitment to doing better.
And being transparent about the process.
So you're showing that you're dedicated to making things right.
Yeah,
But how do you address forgiveness in a public context?
that's a good point.
You can't directly ask every person you've wronged.
Right, but that brings us to step 5. Ask for forgiveness.
Okay?
You might not be able to ask each individual directly,
Right.
but a public apology should still convey humility
Huh?
and a sincere request for forgiveness. Acknowledge that ultimately healing comes from Yahweh
Right.
and that you rely on his mercy.
Forgiveness is a gift,
It is.
not a demand.
Right.
So what's the last step?
Make amends.
Okay,
That's about taking real action.
to repair the harm caused.
Exactly. Maybe making restitution, donating to a cause, or
Okay.
community service.
It's putting action behind your words
Yeah, showing you're invested in restoring trust.
and healing the damage
These 6 steps provide a framework for approaching apologies
with sincerity,
and intentionality.
whether personal or public,
Exactly. And the power comes from its foundation,
in both ancient wisdom,
modern insights,
biblical teachings, and psychological research guiding us.
towards healing and reconciliation.
It's amazing how these different sources offer such complementary perspectives
Right.
on something as universal as the need to apologize and seek forgiveness.
It is.
Before we move on, can we go back to that scientific research for a second?
Sure.
I'm curious about what the data says about the effectiveness of apologies.
Okay.
What makes an apology successful in repairing relationships?
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah, science backing up our faith.
Exactly.
So what does the research say about effective apologies?
Well, it shows that certain things really increase the chances of an apology leading to forgiveness
Okay.
and actually repairing relationships.
It's more than just saying, I'm sorry.
It is, there's more to it.
So what makes an apology really hit home?
Apologies that specifically name the hurt,
Okay.
take responsibility without excuses,
Mm-hmm.
and genuinely show empathy.
Those are the ones that work.
They tend to be much more successful.
It's about showing that you get it.
Yeah,
You understand the impact of your actions on the other person.
exactly. It shows you care about their feelings
Right.
and that you're committed to making things right.
This lines up with both ancient wisdom and modern psychology.
It does.
We've been focusing on giving apologies,
Mm-hmm.
but what about receiving them?
That's a great point.
How can we better understand apologies that are offered to us?
You know, the source material touches on this indirectly.
Okay?
Remember how we talked about tailoring apologies to different love languages?
Yeah.
Well, I think the same idea applies to how we receive apologies.
Oh, interesting.
So just like we express and experience love in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
we might process and respond to apologies differently too.
You mean we might have apology love language?
Exactly.
So someone whose love language is words of affirmation,
Yeah,
they might find a heartfelt verbal apology most meaningful.
exactly.
But someone whose love language is acts of service,
Uh-huh.
they might need to see actions.
To really feel it's sincere,
This is making me think differently about apologies.
I know, it's a whole new layer of understanding.
So how do we figure out our own apology love language?
It starts with looking inward.
Okay.
Think about time you've received apologies.
Mm-hmm.
What felt genuine and what didn't?
What left you feeling unresolved or even more hurt?
Right, by looking at your experiences, you can see what really resonates with you when someone is asking for your forgiveness.
I'm going to start paying closer attention to my reactions in those situations.
I think that's a great idea.
And I love that we can actually talk about our apology love language with others.
Absolutely. Being open about our needs helps others offer apologies that really connect.
It's about setting those healthy boundaries.
And advocating for your own emotional well-being.
And forgiveness, it's a journey, not a destination.
You got it.
It takes time and effort
And grace.
for both sides.
Definitely.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has been fascinating.
We've looked at sacred apologies from so many angles.
From biblical teachings to modern psychology.
Personal stories and even scientific research.
It's like we uncovered a hidden treasure trove of wisdom.
I feel like we had...
And I hope our listeners are leaving with a renewed sense of purpose.
And intentionality when it comes to apologies.
Whether offering or receiving them.
It's about recognizing that sacredness
Mm-hmm.
and creating a more loving and compassionate world.
That's a great way to put it.
As we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
Okay.
How could knowing your own apology love language change things?
That's a great question.
Could it help you understand and receive apologies from others?
I think so.
Maybe this awareness can lead to deeper empathy,
Mm-hmm.
more meaningful connections,
Definitely.
and ultimately a more profound experience of forgiveness.
And reconciliation.
Yes, exactly.
This has been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploring sacred apologies.
Until next time,
May we all walk humbly with Yahweh
love our neighbors as ourselves.
and offer and receive apologies that truly heal and restore.
And may those apologies always be grounded in sincerity
Right.
and the power of love.
Shalom.